Oklahoma hits a high point. T-Rex Beer, Stroh's is back in Detroit, and Kanye? I'm your host, Chris Hardie, and this is your Strait Beer news for the week of August 28th, 2016. On Thursday this week, the Oklahoma Attorney General approved consumption of High Point beers. Earlier this year in June, the Senate had approved a bill aimed at this same point. After the bill was passed, though, the ABLE Commission, ABLE standing for the Alcoholic Beverage Laws Enforcement Commission, they're the commission in charge of actually enforcing and regulating the consumption of alcohol. They had questions about the bill itself and how it should be interpreted. So they then, before the law could be enacted, passed the bill onto the Attorney General to see if he would approve how it would be interpreted. So this week the Attorney General got back and said, no, the bill is approved for drinking High Point beers on site or for taking growlers to go and consuming those at your own house. So what does Oklahoma consider High Point? My understanding is, not being a resident myself, I understand though that a High Point beer in Oklahoma is anything that's not 3.2 alcohol by weight, which would be about 4% ABV. Prior to this legislation and this interpretation by the Attorney General, High Point beers could only be consumed as samples. So now this changes that, and breweries are now free to not just brew for sample purposes, but for commercial purposes and selling to their consumers. Okay, so there is no T-Rex beer. Though, do you remember the startings of the Jurassic Park, the movie? How DNA was able to be extracted from a little piece of amber that had been preserved for the millions of years. Think that, but for beer. So back in the early 90s, a molecular biologist was able to procure a piece of amber was aged at about 45 million years old. And so from that amber, he found that he was able to extract yeast that had been dormant for these millions of years, and then was able to successfully revive it. Well, himself, along with another molecular biologist, were able to do this repeatedly and found that they had some success in doing it. Then the challenge was identifying what kind of yeast it was that they had. After determining that it was a brewer's yeast, they started a brewery. What else? So the brewery is called Fossil Fuels Brewing Company, and they are attempting to make beer with this ancient Jurassic strain of yeast to various amounts of success. However, they think they have a strategy that'll get them that will get them success on a wider scale, and so they've started an Indiegogo campaign with pre-sales of a farmhouse saison, which will be using this yeast, and that'll be distributed in December. So if you're interested, look in the link that I'll have below, and you can find your way to their Indiegogo campaign and contribute if you feel so interested. The beer should be ready come December. For Stroh's is back in Detroit. For me, being a resident of the city, I'm very happy about that. For a little history, Stroh's was originally established in Detroit in the early or mid-1800s. They grew and grew, and by 1985 had found that their facility was old and outdated and they needed to move, so they left the city. And so they had been gone for a number of years. In 1999 they were purchased by Pabst. And what we've been seeing in this area for the last decade at least is a growing beer community. People are very knowledgeable about beer, and at the same time very nostalgic. So you'll see people who are interested in things from their past, from the 60s, the 70s, the things that are happening in the city. As a result, I think Pabst had realized what was going on in the beer community here in the city and saw a chance to capitalize on that. They revived an old Stroh's recipe from 1893 for a Bohemian lager, and it's been being brewed in the city itself, and it just became released earlier this past week. The reception has been very warm throughout the state. In fact, this past Friday there were tap happenings, tap party releases on Friday to celebrate the return of Stroh's. So I guess Stroh's welcome back home. Now for Kanye, Stillwater Artisanal Ales has been doing this series of what they call pop culture series ales. They've done 2 so far, and this is their 3rd. The 2 prior were being Kendrick Lamar and Drake. Now this 3rd is featuring Kanye West. And the way that they're profiling these series is to build a recipe based on that artist's reputation or stylings, and in an artistic way build a recipe that kind of in their minds portrays that artist. So they released the Kanye version, what's titled I Miss the Old Kanye. It's been getting a lot of press through various outlets, and on the label of the beer is fashioned in a way that it's reminiscent, or maybe imitates, you could say, the album label of Kanye's latest album, The Life of Pablo. So as a result of that and a lot of the press it's been getting, the rapper's reps reached out to the brewery, and so now as a result the brewery's taken the steps to issue a recall of all those beers. I don't know if they're going to be actually taken off shelves or they're just going to halt distribution. Well, that's been your beer news for this week, August 28th, 2016. Again, I'm your host, Chris Hardie. If you like what you hear, please subscribe or give me a thumbs up. You can also follow me on Twitter at Strait Beer. I look forward to our communication and look forward to hearing from you. Thanks a lot. Have a great week. See you next time.